Hello, welcome to Cooking with Miller. Tonight we're going to make brownies and chocolate ganache. And for brownies we use unsweetened chocolate. And you see that unsweetened chocolate. It's about 12 ounces of unsweetened chocolate. The kind we carry in the co-op I really like, but it's 5.5 ounces. So it's 2.5 packages of unsweetened chocolate. And you'll have seen earlier the 1 pound of butter, and I used the hand rolled butter that we have from Rochdale Farms. And 1 pound of butter is in a double boiler with the chocolate, and it'll be melting. Once it melts, I add in 8 eggs, and I blend up the eggs a little bit and then add them to the mixture. It'll get real thick, and then we add in the sugar to cool it, and then the flour and the chocolate chips and the baking powder and salt to finish it off, and then it gets popped into the oven and cooked for 20 minutes. I have tools that I can use for a variety of purposes. And these are 1/4 sheet pans. This is called a riser. When they're put together, they make a straight-sided cake, and I like that. These are my favorite things to use. They're not that expensive. You can even find, I had to make these, but you can find them online now. They're about the same price as the pan, but they're very handy. Okay, so I always use a natural sugar that we carry at the co-op. This is a sugar that is unrefined. Basically has a little bit of molasses in it from being unrefined. I like the flavor. I've got the all-purpose flour tonight. I usually, when I'm doing it at home, use spelt flour because I feel it has a little bit more nutty taste to it. Spelt flour is has a little bit more moisture in it, so you sometimes have to adjust your recipe. Although with the brownies, I've never had to do that. We're going to use some eggs, 8 of these eggs. Then there'll be chocolate chips, not only in the batter, but sprinkled on the top. You can also use walnuts, pecans, mint chocolate, chocolate chunks, dried fruit. I've done them all and they all work really nice. I really like this batter because it's very foolproof as long as you do it in the correct sequence. The first part of the batter is to melt. You can see us melting the unsweetened chocolate and butter. When that gets all melted down, then we'll mix in the sugar, the eggs, and then the sugar. Sometimes I can hurry it up a little bit by pushing it around in the pan and making sure each piece is below the surface of the liquid. Okay, so we're cracking eggs right now. I want to crack 8 eggs for this recipe. And then I'll fork them up a little bit. Sometimes I like to blend up the eggs in a blender just in case there's some eggshells when I crack open the eggs, and then it'll allow it to be filtered a lot easier. But these have been working pretty good, so I won't be blending them up. You can see the double boiler working away there. That's just a big saucepan with a nice stainless steel bowl on top. And I filled it about halfway with water and have it on boiling. So we're melting the chocolate and the butter together. And you can see where there's only a few pieces of butter left and it's nice and creamy. I need a fork and I'll fork up these eggs. That'll be fine. Now I'm going to take the flour, and that gets 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Now these are some of my favorite tools to use. These are a tablespoon, 1/2 tablespoon, a 1/4 teaspoon, and a 1/2 teaspoon. So I have to remember that's a 1/2 teaspoon. But we're going to be starting with the tablespoon because we want 3 teaspoons of baking soda. Now we want 1 teaspoon of salt. In baking, salt brings out flavors, just like in soup. You don't want to have too much, and you don't want to have too little. It can be just as frustrating when it's too little. Now it's going to get about a 1/2 cup or 3/4 cup of chocolate chips, and then I'm going to stir all that up. That's our flour base. Now the next thing I have to do is get some parchment paper. That's one of my second favorite tools in the kitchen because you don't have to grease your pans, you just use parchment paper. This is a nice brown parchment paper. And I'll put it underneath the risers. And that'll make it very easy to get the chocolate cake out of the pan. Now we're going to go back here and check how that butter is doing, and it's 1 lump of butter left in here, and that should disappear in a second. This is the point where it's important to follow the correct directions, the correct sequence. So I've melted the butter and the unsweetened chocolate. So we've got this melted now. And the next step is to take it off the double boiler and pour your eggs in it. So I've got the eggs. I'm whisking up the eggs in here into this hot chocolate mixture, and you'll see where it's starting to thicken. And that's just what we want to do. I've discovered this recipe a long time ago because we used to make brownies for receptions quite a bit when I was running Red Willow. And this recipe was a lot easier to do than all the rest of the traditional brownie recipes. Now, can you see how that's thickening up? This particular chocolate will have a sheen on it, that fat. You can see the cocoa fat. Okay, so we've got that thickening up. Now we're going to put on our sugar, and that'll cool down the mixture so we don't start cooking the eggs. So I'm going to stir this around and break up all the natural chocolate chunks. I mean the natural sugar chunks. Find those chunks of sugar and break them down. And you see how that's thickening up nicely. We have our flour, salt, baking powder, and chocolate chips. That gets poured in. This is probably the hardest part of the whole project for me because my hands, after baking and making bread for 25 years, they hurt. And so doing this by hand is hard. It's not easy. Now this scraper I'm using is one of my favorite scrapers. It does make it easy. You can hold it easily in your hand. It doesn't put a lot of pressure on your joints in your hand, which is nice. I've used other ones that are just horrid, so this is my favorite. You'll notice that I used these plastic containers. These are a real standard and standard workhorse in a kitchen. This is the 4 cup. This is the 8 cup. I feel like every home kitchen should have at least 3 or 4 cups and an 8 cup, at least one 8 cup. So I'm continually folding in and getting all that flour mixed in. There's a few flour lumps in there, but they kind of work their way out. See how that's thickening up nicely? Now this recipe fits in a half sheet pan. A half sheet pan is twice as big as a quarter sheet pan. And I have 2 half sheet pans. That's what it looks like. Not all half sheet pans are created equal. You really need to make sure that they're the right size, because some manufacturers make what they call our sheet pans are actually jelly roll pans, because they don't fit. They're not a standard fit. So like a standard sheet pan will take a half sheet of parchment and it'll do a half sheet of the riser. Okay, so I've got a batter here that, like I said, would fit in a half sheet pan. We're going to put it into 2 quarter sheet pans, and the reason why is because our oven here at the co-op is a little baby oven, and it only takes quarter sheet pans. Otherwise, I would have put it in a half sheet pan. So you can kind of see how that's thick. I'm gonna guess it's a little bit. Usually what I do is go out to our scale and weigh each one so that I get the same weight on each pan. I think I'm pretty much right there now. And then we'll smooth it out. You don't have to do a real great job of smoothing it out. As it heats in the oven, it does move a little bit. There we go. But it does make it so that each piece looks really uniform when you go to cutting it up. Okay, so now we're just about ready to put these in the oven. I'm going to sprinkle on some chocolate chips. The rest of that jar of chocolate chips that I got. You can use walnuts. I like walnuts, but when I do catering things, I don't like to use nuts so much because you never know who is going to be allergic to a walnut. You can use pecans. White chocolate chips are really wonderful. Okay, so now they go in the oven. Now I've set the oven for 350 and I'm going to put it on around 25 minutes. Okay, now we're going to make the ganache while we're waiting for the brownies. There is 2 cups of heavy cream. We have a lot of nice heavy cream here. The Organic Valley is a really nice heavy cream. And I just used the Valley View heavy cream. So this heavy cream has got to get warm. And I probably talked to you about my thermometer. This is called the Super Fast Thermal Pen from Thermal Works. They cost about $69 to $89. You open it up like this and it reads the temperature within seconds, and it's got a really good, accurate thermometer. So we've got our heavy whipping cream in this pan. We're going to be putting in all these chocolate discs. These are the chocolate discs that our professionals use, and the co-op has them. These are, I believe, 70% chocolate discs. And they have a wonderful flavor. I like eating the discs alone. So we're heating up our cream. And we want that to get to about 100 degrees. It's at, well, 141 right now. It's 142. We want it to get, I can't remember what the temperature is. I'll tell Catherine later when I figure that out. But it's there now. So we're going to put in all these chocolate discs. This is a ganache. So we're just basically melting chocolate and cream together. And then to give it a little shine, you add in either corn syrup or you add in butter at the end. Corn syrup at the beginning or butter at the end. Since we're doing it more naturally, we'll do butter at the end. And notice how they're melting fairly quickly. At first you want to just slowly incorporate the cream and the chocolate together. And then at some point we'll be vigorously beating it for a few seconds. Now, a ganache you can use in the more liquid form. You can package it in like 8-ounce canning jars and put it in your cooler. You can add vanilla to it. You can add rum to it. You can add a mint flavor to it. There's all kinds of flavors you can do. This is basically a ganache, and it can be used like a fudge. Not a difficult thing to do. Now you notice it's thickening up and smoothing out. If you make a chocolate cake or even those brownies when they come out of the oven's on, that's good. You can cut a small serving size of brownie and put it on your plate. And then when this is done heating up and melting, you can just pour a little bit on the top and then put it to the side a little bit, and it'll harden ever so slowly. Now, do you notice that a lot of these chocolate chunks are now disappearing? I'm going to grab a towel to put on the counter. I think it's time to bring it off the heat and finish stirring it up. Well, that's pretty much all melted in. A nice creamy texture. I'll have to grab some butter. So you want about a tablespoon or two? We'll put a tablespoon in first. See how it goes. There's no reason for you to buy chocolate syrup anymore. You can make your own. Save yourself some money, and you'll know the ingredients you get. One reason why I like working with these ingredients as a co-op is I know where they've come from. I know what they are. I like to buy things that I know that are respectful of the land and respectful of the people who use them. So this is pretty much done. That is chocolate ganache. If you were to make a chocolate cake, you could now let this sit for a little bit, and when it, well, we'll give it a little bit more of a stir, let it sit for a little bit, and then have the cake out and cool, and then just pour this over the cake. It'll make nice edges on it. We don't have a cake, we have brownies. Next time maybe we'll make cake. Okay, it's been about 25 minutes, and now you can see it where it's actually cooked, kind of hardened a little bit on the top. This is what I'd consider to be very good. Now we're going to test the temperature. So if it registers close to 190, 200, it's going to be done. And you notice that when I pull it out, there's nothing on the inside. So this is basically done. If you want these brownies to have little brown spots on them from cooking a little bit more, then you would leave it a little bit longer. I actually like the looks of these right now. I think they'll cut up really nice. So now I'll bring them out. Now this is the other nice thing about doing these quarter sheet pans. This quarter sheet pan system is that you can take another quarter sheet pan and put it on the top, and you've got a nice containerized system. You can put it in your refrigerator and let it cool off. Eat it tomorrow morning, or come back in 20 minutes and eat it then. Yes, that looks very nice. I'm going to enjoy that tomorrow. And you guys can enjoy it too, because tomorrow afternoon I'll put it in 2 little containers. It's going to be called brownie bites. And we also took the ganache and put it in these plastic containers. And you will be able to just spoon that into a bowl and microwave it, and it'll be just fine. Okay, so today we've made 2 trays, 2 half quarter pan trays of brownies. That'll let's see, how many will it serve? You can get 12 brownies out of this, which would be fairly large size. I think they are what do you call it? They're very filling, so you can actually cut them much smaller and get about 30 small brownies out of a pan. We also got 5 containers, which weighs about 2 pounds of ganache. And those will all go into the cooler tonight, and then tomorrow I'll cut them up and have them in our deli case on Tuesday morning. So thank you for enjoying being with us to make brownies, and next time we'll think of something else.